What's up, Cleveland? It's time to turn up the conversation. Tune in to the Strategic Moves with Ken Dow radio show. For What's on Your Mind Tuesdays, call in, comment, and connect on WOVU 95 FM, WOVU.org, and hit us up on social media. Let's go. What's up, Cleveland? It's time to turn up the conversation. Tune in to the Strategic Moves with Ken Dow radio show. For What's on Your Mind Tuesdays, call in, comment, and connect on WOVU 95 FM, WOVU.org, and hit us up on social media. Let's go. What's up, Cleveland? It's time to turn up the conversation. Tune in to the Strategic Moves with Ken Dow radio show. For What's on Your Mind Tuesdays, call in, comment, and connect on WOVU 95 FM, WOVU.org, and hit us up on social media. Let's go. What's up, Cleveland? It's time to turn up the conversation. Tune in to the Strategic Moves with Ken Dow radio show. For What's on Your Mind Tuesdays, call in, comment, and connect on WOVU 95 FM, WOVU.org, and hit us up on social media. Let's go. What's up, Cleveland? It's time to turn up the conversation. Tune in to the Strategic Moves with Ken Dow radio show. Hey, got it poppin' and I'm letting them know. Strategic Moves with Ken Dow radio show. Real talk, authentic trust, you don't wanna miss it. Talking art, politics, culture, and fitness. Yeah, entertaining and educational, this is major. Special guests, talking plenty movers and shakers. Cleveland in the house, the time is right now. Strategic Moves radio show with Ken Dow. Time to motivate, inspire, and right now, this is what you need. And it's hosted by Ken Dow, art, politics, and culture. So let's go. Strategic Moves with Ken Dow radio show. Let your voice be heard, time to elevate. Yeah. Call in or talk to me Tuesday. Hey. Let your voice be heard, time to elevate. 95.9 FM, tune in and don't wait. What's on Your Mind Tuesday? Streaming on WOVU.org and 95.9 FM. And don't just listen, jump in and be the conversation. Let's go.
Good afternoon, good afternoon, good afternoon. This is Strategic Moves with Ken Dow and Dr. Heather Burton. And of course, I'm welcoming each of you to our show this afternoon. However, I am alone. Ken is on vacation and he left me in the studio by myself. So there's no telling where our conversation is going to go today. We might be in all kind of places with the conversation. But I am excited to actually do this show and talk a little bit about what's happening. And we've got a kind of a powerful show for you all today. We're going to talk about, of course, what's happening in the news. And many of you probably are aware of Trump and the National Guard and things happening with Trump and the National Guard. We're going to talk about Black women in work. We're going to talk a little bit about DEI. I was thinking about what we could call this show today. And so one of the things that I came up with, you all, is this whole concept of the table we built and how often this is taken away from us. And so we never get credit for what we do, but the table we built and how navigating the unemployment and how we navigate unemployment as Black women. And so we're going to talk about that today. And you know that I believe in being thoughtful, honest, and unapologetic in the things that may come out of my mouth. But if there's always a need or a necessity to apologize, I will apologize. However, I have not crossed that bridge yet where I've had to come back and apologize for something I've said. I have not been a part of the cancel audience. And so I am going to spend few minutes talking with my people in the studio today because they're here with me and I can see them right now. And so we think about this. So Uni, let's talk a little bit about what was the weekend? What was happening with the weekend? What was your weekend like?
Hey, y'all. This is weird being here without Ken, but
Isn't it?
This is. But we taking over.
We are.
We taking over. My weekend was cool. So much so to the point I had to write it all down because it's been so many moving pieces, just not only here in Cleveland, but in life and in DC and in everywhere. But my weekend was cool. I did not get a chance to go to the Supernatural Circus. Some of my friends got a chance to go. They said they thoroughly enjoyed it. Cuyahoga County Fair was going on as well, which there was a shooting. I hoped that young man who was shot in the chest makes it. I have not searched for an update for that yet, but I did plan on hitting the fair at some point. I just did not make it because I was also made it to the National Association of Black Journalists who were in town this past weekend.
Too.
Yes, and let it through the after party for the last night. We had a great time. I didn't meet as many people as I wanted to because I was busy doing WLVU stuff during most of the seminars and things of that nature. So I'm sorry about that, but I plan to be in Atlanta for the next one and taking a full advantage of all the things and all the people that were there and what will be there. I did get to make it to the MGK Day festival, the last day, which was Sunday. And it was beautiful to just look around and see Cleveland just happy and joyful and no mess and everybody just getting food and watching a concert and taking photo ops on all of the little displays that they had, the steps and the repeats. It was a really cool vibe. If you made it to the MGK festivities, any of them, because they have made it it feels like a week-long celebration, which I love it. And I heard somebody say, well, why the city doing all of that for him? Why they don't do it for Bone Thugs? Why they don't do it for themselves? MGK did that for himself. This was not something that the city put together for him. He approached the city with this idea, and he has grown this idea. So for those out there who hating, stop. Just stop.
So here, I'm gonna take you to us culture people, us people in a different generation.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about who is
Machine Gun Kelly.
So you had to say, now I know exactly who it is. And sometimes, I have to hear things to know. But I think sometimes we just find reasons to hate.
Yes.
So and hate when things aren't going the way that we want them to do. So we find a way to say, okay, let me figure out how this could actually hate on things. So we dealing with a little couple studio things that's happening in the studio right now as we work through. But yeah, I think sometimes we just hate to hate.
I have to mute that. Yeah, you want to mute that. Yes, we do. We just like to hate and be upset and think like, oh. And that's another thing culturally when it comes to MGK. A lot of individuals have changed their position on how they feel about him because he has gotten into rock. He switched out of rap, which had got him in the game. So people feel away because they're like, oh, you got in the game, now you want to switch to rock and do all this white stuff when you was a wild bull before, kicking it with the black folks living on
and you know how we territorial. You can't be kicking it with us, and then you flip the script. Now that you got a little pub, you gonna leave the black people behind.
And that is definitely not what he has done. Okay. Even when you listen like his last album, like he has some rock, some rap, like he is a very complicated artist, I feel like. And when you are a complicated artist, it's harder for people to box you in the way that us as humans, how we internalize and download information, like to box people in. And like, you don't fit anything, so I don't know what to do, so I'm just gonna hate. And it's like, no, boo, no,
we can't hate. And I think that's what kills us within the community, is that we've got to get away from the crabs in a barrel mentality.
Yes.
Yep, we got to get away from that. And when we get away from that, then hopefully we can come together as a community with different things. But I don't know. I see it all across the board. I see it in the church. I see it in the community. I see it everywhere. Is that we just have this natural distinction or natural instinct to hate on each other when there's enough for everyone and there's enough resources, which makes me, I'm not going to jump ahead because I want to jump ahead, but I'm waiting on our guest to join to talk about a couple different things.
sent you the link for them, the new link.
Yeah. I forwarded the new link. See, this is what happens in the studio. You know, you have to take care of business.
Hey,
too.
we live, baby.
And we live.
Baby.
But you know, so what after party did you go to? This is what I'm curious about, because I went to a happy hour for NABJ. And hung out with a couple friends because I had friends who were in town from the whole journalist. And yes, listening audience, I do have a degree in broadcasting journalism. Most people don't even know that because I've done so many other things. But my actual degree is my undergrad was journalism and Black Studies with a minor in theater.
See, I love all your tentacles. I love it.
Yeah, but everything comes back to center. I always tell people, even though I do different facets, it all revolves around three identities, being a Christian Black woman, and everything that I do revolves around those three identities.
Clock it.
Yeah, so I was just laughing because I was thinking about how many people that were in town that I knew that was talking about these after parties, and so I was just wondering which one were you
I literally only made it to one, which was the after party with Atlanta, because the next year convention will be in Atlanta, and whoever has next year does the last after party for the previous year.
Oh.
And so all the Atlanta folks was in town, other people from all over really was in town. It was a great time. I noticed something about myself, which, you know, if you are a person with a pulse and a consciousness that understands that you are in this human form, in this realm, you will always be flawed and you will always be grasping for growth, right?
Yeah.
And so I realized I'm not a good networker.
Ooh.
I'm a good people person, and it's a difference because I don't
Tell
know
me
how to
more.
talk to people that I don't know like that.
Okay.
But if I don't know you like that, but something about you draws me in, then I'll talk to you. I'm a very vibey person.
But otherwise you're not the person that's going to go up and say,
hey, I'm Uni from WWU.
Yeah.
Like, that's just not me. And that being put in that situation with a room full of journalists that I did not know made me realize I need to work on my networking skills because I just don't like talking to people that I don't know. Is that a Cleveland thing?
No, because I don't like talking to people. I don't like talking to people, period. No, just kidding, listening audience. No, but you know, I think it's personality. And I think sometimes when we're in these positions is that we are talkers on a regular basis, is that when we go out or when we're in public settings, we like to just stand back versus having to always engage with people. But you can't afford to do that. You can't afford to do it with networking, and you can't afford to do it when you just out.
Yes.
Because if people see you, and I'll give an example. I was at an event Thursday night. And someone said, I never see you anymore. I never see you. I said, because I just get tired sometimes of engaging. And so after so many people came up to me, she was like, wow, you the mayor. You know everybody. I said, and see, this becomes exhausting sometimes. And people don't understand that when you're in certain positions and certain limelight of how people are always constantly coming and constantly talking. And then if you don't hug or if you don't talk, then you're rude, then you're mean, then you're nasty.
Yeah.
And you just like, no, I'm just in a space right now. I just want to, because most people don't even recognize, I think this is the other thing, and this is what I will ask you is sometimes, like for me, I am extroverted by the work that I do. And the work that I do causes me to be extroverted. And I'm a people person too. So I'm outgoing. I'm a people person. But I am so introverted. I can be home by myself. I can be on vacation by myself. I can be at dinner by myself. And I have a great time.
Yes.
And a number of people can. And I think that's what it is that people don't realize that you have this shift in personality. And so with the idea of like having to network, and I think also network is selling yourself very often. And we don't like to do that in general. We don't, and that's great because that probably is a great lead-in for our conversation today as we talk about Black women.
Yes.
Because one of the things statistically is Black women, and women in general, but we gonna talk about Black women, can have 10 out of 10 or 9 out of 10 qualifications for a job or for a position and will not self-promote themselves. But let a man have 3 out of 10 and they're still going to self-promote.
Oh, yeah, I'm the best in the city.
Yeah.
You better believe it. You better know it. They go screaming from the top.
They go screaming from the top of their lungs.
Yes.
And so, it makes me think about a lot of things that we deal with. And I want to bring our guest on who's with us today. We got Yolanda Bond joining us, or I should say Yolanda Wilson. I'm sorry, Yolanda Bond Wilson. I have known her for years. Yay! Applause. So she is, we went to Ohio State together. And one of the reasons that I asked her to kind of come on the show and talk with us this afternoon is she's dealing with the same thing that I'm doing. Dealing with is a Black woman who is unemployed right now. A Black woman who was also committed to diversity, equity, and inclusion within the work environment. But what it looks like for Black women now, and statistically, when we look around, Black women are the ones that have lost their work. They're the ones that are being laid off and being unemployed. I'm going to find the statistics for you all. Is that on August 5th, USA Today reported Black women in particular have seen a dramatic increase in unemployment over the past year, from 5.5% to 6.3%. And I know very often when you hear numbers, especially percentage points, it doesn't sound like a lot. But when you think about 1% point increase, it is a lot based on numeric value in terms of the population and what the numbers are. And if we think about Black women in the population, a 1% increase is a drastic increase when you just think about the number of Black women. And then MSNBC reported that 300,000 Black women have left the labor force in just 3 months, that their labor force participation rate has dropped below that of Latinas for the first time in over a year. And more than 518,000 Black women still haven't returned to the labor force since the pandemic began, leaving their real unemployment rate just above 10%. That's a lot. I wish I had the actual, when you think about that, the unemployment rate just above 10%. And so I want to bring you all into this conversation. You in the studio, so you might as well just stay close to the mic in case I want to talk to you about this. Or you have something to chime in, because I know very often you have some things that you like to chime in and deal with us. And so I want to kind of touch on you. But Yolanda, welcome to the show. Can you all hear? I can't hear. Hold on. It's a disconnect. We missing volume.
Can you hear me, Dr. Burton?
Yep, I can hear you now. Perfect. All right. Okay. Welcome to the show. Now, I'm going to tell you all, this could turn into a real girlfriend hour too, because I cannot tell a lie. This is one of my closest friends and one of my traveling buddies. But you all have heard me mention this before. You heard me mention this a couple weeks ago, is that I was with her as well as some other people. And out of our 5 friend group, 3 of us are unemployed at this particular moment. The other person is in an emotional space. She gave me permission to share her story, but she's actually been unemployed for over a year and a half now. And she was someone who was in an executive role at her job, as well as someone who dealt in DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, in some aspects within her work. And so all of 3 of us have dealt with diversity, equity, and inclusion in some aspects within our job. And so when we think about this and we think about what's happening across the board, Yolanda, how have you been dealing with this? What impact has this had on you, especially being unemployed? What impact has this had on you?
So say that again, Heather. Like, I'm having difficulty hearing you. I'm hearing like every third word.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was saying, what impact has this had on you?
The impact of unemployment?
Yes, the impact of unemployment.
So the impact of unemployment for me, I think, has been an opportunity to self-reflect. It's been an opportunity to understand what it is that I need to be doing differently and to adjust for my family. So just a little bit of background about me. I do have 2 children. I have 2 boys. I have a son who is an entering senior in high school, and I have a son who is 12, so he's entering 7th grade. What this summer has done for me, this summer of unemployment has done for me, is given me an opportunity to really sit down and think about what are some of the things that I want to do differently with them. Like, Dr. Burton, this has been my first unemployment stint since I was what, 16, 15, 16.
Mm.
So I would say that this has been a period for me to like really dig in and understand what I want to do, and what I want them to do. This has been a time for me to sit down and understand, what does it looking like for these college applications for this child? What is it looking like for ACT and SAT? What is it looking like for scholarship opportunities? And then like the other stuff. So layered in on what it is that I need to do. It gave me the opportunity and time to dig in on what it is I need to be doing with and for them. So I've been reflecting on my certifications, reflecting on my degrees, reflecting on what it is that I'd like to do, and then making sure that I'm conveying those things in my job search. So for me, it has been awakening. It's been an opportunity for me to explore me and for me to explore those in my close circle around me.
Yeah, and I like that because I think that's the same thing for me, is that it has been an awakening. But the interesting thing is this is not my first bout with unemployment.
Right.
And so this is my third, technically, when we talk about unemployment. This is probably the first time in the history of my career. Well, let me rephrase that, because I think I don't know how many of you all in the audience know that I did acting and modeling for years. And so in that lifestyle, I did a lot of paycheck to paycheck living compared to when I decided to go into higher ed after I got my PhD. But once I entered into higher ed, I was working on grants. And so even in working on grants, I became dependent upon how long a grant would last. And that was kind of the determination of what my job would be like and how long that grant would actually last. And so in that, I faced unemployment in 2006. I faced unemployment in 2015 and now in 2025. And here's the thing, Yolanda, is at one time I remember I was working out at the gym and someone said, well, if they would get more education, then they could find a job. And so my question to this person, because it was the 2007 episode of unemployment, from 2006 to 2007. And at that point I had gotten my PhD. And so I had a PhD and was unemployed. And so I asked this person, I said, well, how much more education do I need in order to get a job when I have a PhD? And so the person then had to backtrack and try to figure out what their statement was. But I think that is also a misconception. And when we look at the statistics right now, is that Black women were the fastest growing population in terms of becoming educated, but they are also the fastest growing population of becoming unemployed now. And so when we think about, is this a correlation? Now, I know statistically we can't really say it's a correlation, but unless we had some data that was driving it. But what do you think about that? What do we do as it relates to here is, and if we think about, I'm not trying to go down a philosophical concept, but if we go down like this whole idea of W.E. Du Bois and the talented 10th, well, if the talented 10th is being laid off, how are we going to carry the rest of the community?
Right. I'm glad you asked that question. I actually, in my last role, was talking to an HR professional at my former company, and we were talking about whether or not I wanted to pursue an opportunity in HR. And I was like, oh, I could go back to school and get it. He was like, wait, Yolanda, how many degrees do you already have? And so in telling him that, he was saying to me that Black women are really, really quick too, to be like, okay, I need to check more boxes. I will go back and continue my education to be able to check these boxes. And what he was saying was exactly what you were just talking about a little bit ago. The pieces that I could catch was that, Black women, or women in particular, can check 8 or 9 of the 10 qualifications and still feel like we aren't enough. Whereas men can check 3 and be like, okay, gung ho, ready to go. So what he was saying to me is like, stop thinking that you are not enough right now, because you are. And then we'll pursue what it is that you want to do. For him, his message was more about figure out what it is that you want to do, because you already have knowledge, skills, and abilities to be able to do whatever it is that you'd like to do. And then if there are blanks, then we figure out how to fill them in. And he said, go back and get a certification. Go spend 6 weeks in a class. Don't go get a whole new degree in an effort to pursue what's next for you. And so that was a big message for me, because I thought, the gap was a chasm when in fact it was just a little bitty gap.
Yeah, and I think that's interesting that you say that, because I think this is something that happens with us as Black women and Black people just in general, is that we've been beat up so that we often forget what we actually possess and what we have, because we live in this spaces of constantly, and we talk about this, is that white people, specifically white men, they can come to the table with mediocrity. We can't come to the table with mediocrity. And so we put that title of excellent on us as a twofold. And that excellent becomes, wait, I don't have enough degrees. Wait, I don't have enough education. Wait, I don't have enough work experience. I remember I dealt with the same thing of thinking I did not have enough work experience. And so I wouldn't apply for certain jobs. And it wasn't until, and even more recently, I did an interview with someone and they said, how do you know unless you're in the position whether or not you can do it? And so you have to just apply and take on that task. And so I think that that's something else. Now, we are probably due for a commercial break. And a break. Oh, Uni said I ain't got to take one. So this is what happens when you in charge. You ain't even got to take breaks throughout the day.
It's up to you, girl.
I ain't even got to take no break. I can keep going. But I think, I don't know. I'm looking at the impact of these Black women being laid off, and specifically thinking about the lens of how many Black women lost their jobs because of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And how many times, and I was having a conversation with someone this morning driving in, and they were given a perspective of diversity, equity, and inclusion from a Black male. And they talk about something that they want to do with how DEI didn't empower Black men. And so that's a whole nother ball game. But what I share with them is that what happened with diversity, equity, and inclusion is that Black women took the roles on because we wanted to see the change and we wanted to make the change. Companies gave us the role because they felt that it was a role very often that was not as important as other roles. And so who am I going to put into these positions? I'm going to put Black women, other minorities, because I don't think it's as important as it is. Now, not all companies did that, not all organizations, but we had some to do that. And so in your work in dealing with like diversity, equity, and inclusion, how did you navigate that lens of it being important or it not being important when you put forth some of the initiatives that you did?
I'm sorry, Heather. State the question for me again, please.
Okay, so let me turn back to the mic because I might have turned from the mic. Is how did you navigate, and I'll put it this way, how did you navigate emphasizing the importance of diversity, equity, and inclusion to those in the work environment, specifically when very often DEI is looked at as just something that's sugar-coated to give Black people, what word am I looking for? To patronize the idea that we're doing something, but we really don't want to do something.
Gotcha. Okay, I think I understand. So I was blessed enough to be able to work for a company that, in my opinion, was very, very focused on diversity, equity, and inclusion before it became like a super big thing for others to focus on. And the great part about that is that it was embedded in the culture in a way that when we started to see it decline in other companies, we didn't necessarily feel and see that decline for my company. So I would say that the things that we really, really focused on was identifying the pieces of diversity, equity, and inclusion that were important in our workforce to our people. So we had, for example, I want to say maybe 14 or 15 different like employee resource groups to make sure that people felt connected, and not just connected to their role and connected to their immediate work team and their boss and the people that may have worked for them, but connected in a different way to other people inside the organization, people that had some sort of commonality together. So, of course, there was a women's group, there was an African American group, an Asian group, so on and so forth. And so what we were always working to do and encouraged to do was not only to think about the people inside the group who belong to that cultural group, but then also the allyship. So it was always a welcoming in of, hey, come in, learn about this, learn about Juneteenth. We'd have different events, come in and learn about this, learn about what MLK Day means to us, learn about Kwanzaa, learn about what Kwanzaa means to us and how we're going to celebrate it. And it wasn't just, it didn't feel cursory, to be honest with you. It definitely felt like relationship building with people, and people would pull you aside offline and say, hey, what is it that I can do to be a better ally? What is it that I can do to make sure that people feel heard, people feel seen? So I think that it was an authenticity to it that I hadn't felt in any other organization. So when I think about DEI, and one of the things I learned from you a long time ago was like not minimizing that. So at work, I would often say the full diversity, equity, inclusion, because to your point, I wanted people to see and understand that there are different pieces of it, and each individual piece of it has its own root and has its own purpose that may be different from the other two. So having diversity and inclusion,
Doesn't mean we
good.
have equity.
But if you don't have that equity, that part is the part that we absolutely really, really need. So for me, it was about authenticity. So wherever I go, whatever space I end up in the future, it will be working to make sure that we are putting the roots in to help us build that foundation to grow what it is that we need to grow for a diverse, equitable, and inclusive environment.
Yeah, and I want to ask you this, or I want to talk about this a little bit, is that I always talk too of how we navigated the what about me. Because I know you're like I am in a lot of perspectives of when we come to the table, we looking out for black people. We thinking about the black people in the room. We want to know about the black people in our company. And so how do we get into this dealing with this always what about me? And the reason that I say that is that I'm thinking about still in this umbrella of black women and the impact that it has on black women. And one of my hardest things within the work environment was dealing with liberal white women.
Dealing with
Liberal white women.
okay.
Liberal white women wore me out. And I remember when I first started in diversity, equity, and inclusion, I read the book White Fragility by Robin DiAngelo. And I didn't like that book. I was like, this book don't have nothing to do with me. I don't like this book. But then I started in the diversity office. And within my first probably month of working, a white woman cried on me. And she cried. She gave me the white woman tears and went into, this is just so hard. You don't understand how hard it is. And I literally had the phone up to my ear and I put, because we were in COVID too. So, we home working. So every meeting now is virtual. And I was like, is this woman really crying? And so from that, I started revisiting Robin DiAngelo's White Fragility. And everything that she talks about in that book, I swear I experienced from a white liberal woman in diversity, equity, and inclusion. Even to the point of thinking of the whole idea of a white woman, an ally, making it about them versus the incident or the person or the experience of someone else is dealing in the discriminatory act or the microaggression or racism. And so one of the things that I remember is I had somebody, there was an argument, and they turned it all about them versus who was really affecting. And so what did you deal with the liberal white women?
Yeah, a little bit. So I think that we had some challenges from that perspective. And what I loved about like where I worked before is that every time I felt like I needed to say, hey, wait a minute, you're not the center. You're not the center of this. This is not about you. This does not revolve around you. You are not in this revolution or evolution. Somebody else did it for me. So it was like, oh, so the people that I've been having these conversations with on the side are hearing me and feel like they can intervene without me having to. So whenever I was feeling like I'm ready to pounce in on that sort of thing, like folks would jump in and be like, you know what, this does not revolve or evolve around you. Like you gotta remove yourself from being the center of it. So I think that was the benefit of having good relationships with people, was that folks they weren't allowed to feel offended by somebody else saying, wait, this is not about you. Like we get it. And it's not about you. And one of the things that benefited us was like we started a bit of a book club. The first book we read was I Am Not Your Negro. So imagine me sitting in this room, right? James Baldwin, or sitting in a virtual room because I work virtually, sitting in this virtual room with various people, lots and lots of people reading that book and then talking about the feedback from it, and then always, making sure that people understand that they're at the center. So to your point, I do think that we never got to a point where we got to tears a lot, but never let it get to a point where folks felt in the center. We would always prevent that.
Yeah, that's a good thing, because I know so many people who do the work. We end up in these spaces where we just get tired of having to push back against that mindset. So we're gonna take a break, take about a minute break, and then we'll be back. And we got another guest that's joining us, and we're gonna kind of shift the narrative and shift the conversation, because I want to go into for a few minutes talking about Trump and the National Guard and all of my opinions and thoughts around that. And we're going to keep our audience with us, because there's a video that Lateef is going to come back and show that actually talks about this, but it also talks about black women in it. And so we're going to touch on that when we get back from the break.
What's up, Cleveland? It's time to turn up the conversation. Tune in to the Strategic Moves with Ken Dow radio show for What's on Your Mind Tuesdays. Call in, comment, and connect on 95.9 FM WOVU, WOVU.org, and hit us up on social media. Cleveland, this is your show, your topics and your voice. Join me, Ken Dow, for What's on Your Mind Tuesday on 95.9 FM WOVU. Call in and comment on social media. Let's make this conversation unforgettable. Streaming live at WOVU.org.
Welcome back to another episode, or another part of Strategic Moves with Ken Dow and Dr. Heather Burton. For those of you joining in late, Dr. Heather Burton is alone in the studio today, and she is going rogue. No, but she is by herself. And so we've been having some great conversation, really talking about black women and what it means for the unemployment rate as we think about black women being unemployed. And I think many of you know that I am currently unemployed from a full-time position due to the Trump administration and the cuts with diversity, equity, and inclusion, and the executive order that came out. When we think about that executive order. And I had a conversation with someone the other day, and they said to me, they were asking me how I was faring and how I was doing. And I was telling them I'm in a mental space. I'm in a good mental space right now, because what I haven't had to do is fight people in order to prove my worth, or fight people to prove the worth of black and brown people. And so it's been a good mental space for me that I've been out of that particular, because I did a lot with hiring. And when you do a lot with hiring and you're trying to make changes as it relates to hiring, people often don't want to push forward because they think that it's a win-lose situation versus a win-win. And so it was a lot of pushback in that space. But I think, and I share with this person, what surprised me was not that Trump came out with another executive order, because he had an executive order in 2019 that many people were unaware of. And that was an executive order around sex and race stereotyping. But the level of funding cuts, which takes us to this whole premise of control. And controlling what happens within these Americas, these United States of America, it's this idea of control. And I know if you've been listening to the news, which sometimes I have to cut it off and I have to go away, and then other times I jump in and I even listen to opposing views so that I can see what the argument is. But I've been paying attention to the deploying of the National Guard and this whole idea of deploying the military as it relates to cities. And so when we think about this, we think about what has happened with the federal government. If we break down Department of Justice, if we break down Department of Defense at the federal level, and Trump can control that, now he's moving into this idea of cities. And starting with DC, but we also know what he did with Los Angeles and what happened with Los Angeles around immigration. And so one of the questions that came up was, when I heard a news anchor say this, is this the fact to take, every time Trump does something like this, is it to take the focus off of something else? So is it to take the focus off of Epstein so he can get away from us really looking at them files and finding out what he was doing? And I won't say anything on the air that might get me put off, but what he may have been doing. Is it to take away from the focus of other things? But even if it's to take away the focus, think about the danger that we deal with and we face if we talk about a president, not just any president, but this president having full control over the release of the National Guard military units to come into cities where you think that it's solving crime issues. And I heard statistically, and especially in a DC, crime is down. And in 24, crime even came down. And so when we think about this, thinking about that whole aspect, I don't know if the video is ready that I wanted to show. I wanted to show this video clip. So, Uni, if you can play that for a minute.
Am I saying this? Because Trump has declared war on Black America. What else is it when he orders the military to provide resources to law enforcement and then unleashes those cops and the National Guard into the blackest city in America? And then he promises to unleash them also in other black cities in America. And we know they're coming into black neighborhoods because Trump said that blacks commit most of the crime in this country, which isn't true. And he said that to thunderous applause in a black Detroit church. So, hello, stop and frisk, and bye-bye due process, bye-bye equal protection, bye-bye Fourth Amendment, bye-bye reasonable suspicion, probable cause, see you later, and so forth. I say this because I've been a practicing criminal defense and civil rights attorney for almost 2 decades, and I know what's going on. I know what's coming. Now, to be good for my colleagues and me to have this beefed up law enforcement. But here's the thing. Crime has been on a sharp downward turn since the 1990s. There's no need for militarized cops, but there is a need for some of the very programs that Trump got rid of in order to pass his big ugly bill. Specifically, there's a need for early childhood education. There's a need for Head Start. There's a need to increase the federal minimum wage. There's a need to increase affordable housing. We need him to stop firing black women employees in D.C. I mean, think about that. He's firing so many black women in the federal government that unemployment for black women is rising, and for black people generally. Then he want to send militarized cops into our neighborhoods at our sons. I mean, that is crazy. In fact, what this is, to be exact, is authoritarianism imposing fascism to protect white supremacy. Once again, this is authoritarianism imposing fascism in order to protect white supremacy. And oh yeah, the pro-black imposters who helped Trump get reelected is now trying to sound outraged that he's doing this to D.C. But he wouldn't be doing this, perhaps, if they hadn't told so many people to either vote for Trump or vote the couch. That is why they're pro-black imposters. Remember, stay woke.
I could not have said it better myself in terms of the view. But we have another caller who joined us, and I don't want to let our guest sit by the wayside, so I'm going to bring her in on this conversation as I jump into talking about pro-black imposters. Not that she's a pro-black imposter, though. Let me correct that. So joining us this afternoon for these few minutes is Amaya Gibbs. Amaya Gibbs is on the call, and Amaya is a PhD student in Boston at the University of Massachusetts or University of Boston, Amaya?
The University of Massachusetts Amherst, actually.
Yes. So and I joked, somebody had asked me about moving to Boston. I said, it's enough racism other places. I don't know. And that's not, sorry, Boston folk, but that just ain't no place I want to go right now in terms of working at the university. But Amaya is a student who is majoring in is your program Africana Studies, Afro-American
Studies?
Afro-American Studies. And so let's talk about this, Amaya, for a minute. These pro-black imposters and what Trump is doing in terms of releasing the National Guard to fight crime. What are your thoughts?
My thoughts are specifically of really implementing the National Guard into a city specifically for DC, looking at the statistics of the city, it being a majority Black city, and implementing the National Guard, of what that means to be under martial law, of the dangers of children, of Black teenagers, of what that's going to be and what that effect is going to be. I think it's very frightening. And I think it's very scary to think of how this will set a precedent for other cities in the U.S. I feel like this is almost a trial to what can be done in other cities as well.
Yeah, and that's exactly what it is. It is a trial, and I think I read somewhere where we talk. He starts with D.C. right now to talk about reducing the crime in D.C., which is non-existent in terms of the level of crime that he's talking about that it's going to take the National Guard to come in and do. But it's also the same concept that he did in L.A. when we talked about immigration and how he perpetuated, and the media perpetuated, that there was more happening in L.A. that was actually happening. And so the media had folks thinking that people were rioting in L.A. and everything else, and there was none of this stuff happening, but yet you released the National Guard in LA. And so I think the two places are Arizona, and I can't remember the other A, that is supposed to be this pilot that takes place, I think I read, in 2027. But when we think about what happens with that, this is an attack against us. And folks keep trying to minimize what is happening in the community when we talk about the attack that is happening against Black people. And it's not to say yay or nay as it relates to Trump, but it's to say the attack that's happening to Black people in the community. And how do we navigate this, specifically when we think about where we're going, where we've been, and moving us back to pre-Reconstruction. I can't even say post-Reconstruction, but pre-Reconstruction in terms of the policies and the laws that are trying to be passed from this dictator leadership. Amaya, I didn't really call you on here for that, but I knew that you had some information as related to that, and I just had to get this out about this National Guard, because it's just interesting. I need somebody just to pull out the Epstein files. Let's just pull out the Epstein files. Can we just pull them all out and read them everywhere and then see what's happening? Because I think that's that. But Amaya, as a young Black woman in this political climate, what are you dealing with?
I'm dealing with a lot of terror in a different way, because I think in the past few years, obviously in the past few elections, there's been sort of layers and levels of rising terror, but this is much different. I feel like there's an all-out attack on Black, especially with the policies being passed, on Black people, on Black women. So this is definitely something that I believe is going to be a huge watershed for myself, along with other Black women, going into 2026, 2027, and so on and so forth. And I can't imagine what the major fallouts are going to be after this election.
Yeah, and how do we deal with this? Where do we go from here? And especially as a what are you, Gen Z?
Yes.
Gen Z? I done lost the gens. Do we start over? A is the baby's Gen A? Like Gen A? I don't know.
I think it's like a double letters now. Like,
right.
I don't know. Let's Google.
Let's Google and see what the babies are, because
now that Google is dependable, y'all. And
right.
I hope y'all are cross-referencing whenever y'all are Googling anything to other nations and nationalities news outlets. I mean, places over in Europe, Palestine, everywhere else in the world. Don't just depend on Google, because Google be lying now. I'm just being honest. I'm sorry.
Right. Google is one of those things where, and here's the other thing, and I didn't get to watch this news clip. You Googling.
How you know I forgot?
Right, because I saw your facial I saw the facial expression.
Wait.
It was one of my facial expressions. It's one of my facial expressions when I forget everything. Like, wait, what was I supposed to be doing? You Googling the new generation name for the babies. But I almost forgot my thought. I didn't get to hear this story, but one of the stories, and I'm thinking of you, Amaya, and others, as Uni talks about Google, is this AI, like I don't know what AI is AI, and police using AI. And I couldn't hear what the story was about police using AI for something. But all I kept thinking about was, when we think about artificial intelligence, is that a number of people on the other side who are creating the programming are biased and racist.
That part.
And so we often talk about the positive side of AI, but the reality is we've got to look at who are the creators. And in that creation, how many biases, how much racism is going into creating programming. Because if you have preconceived notions and stereotypes about individuals, that's easily going to be perpetuated in the programs that you commit or the programs that you create. So that was just a sidebar thought. I think Lateef was about to join us because
Generation Alpha comes after Gen Z.
I was close.
So
I said A. I was about to go through the alphabet and be like alpha, beta, gamma. But
well, now we are on beta because 2025 to 2039 is beta.
Lord, this is about to show my age. I'm gonna have to. We at beta now. So see, Amaya, you old now too, because you it's 2 generations behind you now. And I forgot even what my question was. We're gonna be to you in terms of this. But I think what we think about just, as a Generation Z, what would you want to see for those coming behind you? And what advice could you give in terms of those in your generation, those that are older, younger, that can help to navigate the political climate and the things that are happening that are surrounding you, especially as a young Black woman?
I think the biggest piece of advice would be continue talking, continue having these conversations, because I believe the most dangerous thing is to see things happening and not speak on them, or to see things happening and turn a blind eye, and to continue keeping up this, I guess hear no evil, speak no evil thing of just not speaking on or acknowledging what's happening, because eventually these things will continue to grow and fester. And it'll be something that if, obviously in my generation, our grandkids, great grandkids will be dealing with many years down the line. And I just wanted to briefly speak on what you mentioned about AI and representation, because I've been noticing that recently there has been creations of AI videos of Black women, a creation of AI videos of Black women showing them as having very sort of negative depictions, negative stereotypes of what Black womanhood is. And this is not obviously real Black women. These are people creating videos on YouTube of what Black women are and perpetuating harmful stereotypes. And people are consuming this and thinking that this is what Black women, this is what we are. This encompasses our totality. So I think it's very concerning and troubling, specifically seeing those things that I've seen on social media personally. But yes.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things is that many people are getting, as Uni said, many people are getting their news, they're getting their information from Google. And so if you're using TikTok as your news source, as your news outlet, and you seeing the perpetuation of Black women in a negative stereotype, or these stereotypes and these preconceived notions, then that's what you tend to believe. And we know we can think about this from a historical lens. Is that historically what tended to happen is that many folks got their images from the media. And so if you're getting your images from the media, then those images perpetuate what is negative, especially if there's not multiple images. And I think that is what we know what has happened historically. We can think back to theater. I always use, for example, when you talk about the Birth of a Nation. And Birth of a Nation, and now I know I'm going down your road, Amaya, in terms of theater, but when we talk about Birth of a Nation, and the first film put out is you have this movie that perpetuates the fact that this white man who's a part of the KKK is going to save this Black man or save this white woman from who was been supposedly raped by a Black man. But what the camera does, I was getting to this, the camera comes in on the Black man and really close to perpetuate this image of negative stereotypes. Same image that we see perpetuated throughout the media still today. And so those are things that we have to be careful of and we have to be aware of when we're talking about AI. But to close us out today and to kind of wrap up the show, I'm going to try this whole idea and this concept is really talking about what's your great, good grace moment? And so leaving us on a positive note instead of the negative that, we don't want to leave on a down note. I'm not going to say negative because as Black women, we just have to, we're dealing with different facets. But what is that great, that grace, that good moment that has happened to you this past week, or that you're hoping will happen in the next week that you want to share with our listening audience?
A great moment is that I had the wonderful opportunity to actually be on a Zoom call with Eartha Kitt's daughter, and I also got to be on a Zoom call with the great granddaughter of Madam C.J. Walker, and I got to hear them speak about for Kit, of her mother's legacy, and then for Alelia Bundles, of her great grandmother's legacy, and hearing the experiences and history of these Black women, and hearing their stories was just so profound, and it inspired me as a Black woman to remember that despite what is currently happening in the media politically, there is a long sustained history of greatness, of grace, of beauty, of eloquence, and that we can continue to create this and be this and embody this. So that was my moment of just being able to be just so grateful to be in that presence.
I love that, especially the opportunity to share with Eartha Kitt's daughter and Madam C.J. Walker's daughter. I think when you have that type of experience, for those of you who have never had a chance, follow Amaya Gibbs. She has done some great research and work with Karamu House. How we met, she was one of my students at Case Western Reserve, and she's gone on to do great things as she continues her PhD program. But as I close out today, I thank you all for listening, and hopefully something was said that you can take with you, that you can use in your life. And I think for me, when I talk about that great, good grace moment, I'm going to leave you with the words of Don Cornelius, that may you go in love, peace, and soul. I think if we live in those spaces of love, peace, and soul, it'll make us a much better world and a much better community. Have a great week, you all.